Mexican-American tenor Jonathan Cebreros was born in San Diego, California, and grew up in Tijuana, Mexico. Unlike most singers, Jonathan came into singing at a later stage in his life and took his first voice lesson while in college. At the time, Jonathan got involved in several projects as part of the Tijuana Opera Chorus, initially as a mere hobby through his newfound love for opera. Midway into completing his undergraduate studies in business, he decided to continue this hobby by studying privately in San Diego, California, and enrolling in music theory classes at a community college. Before graduating, Jonathan decided to pursue a vocal performance graduate degree and continue his studies as part of the Masters of Music and Voice program at the Music Conservatory of the Chicago College of Performing Arts at Roosevelt University. Jonathan believes in the magic and power of music, which can have a transformative impact on those who have a chance to experience it, as well as those who are privileged to communicate its messages. As artists, it is our duty to be loyal to the message of the composer, but also to communicate our own message through interpretation. Jonathan believes opera should be accessible to everyone who is willing to give it a try. Please help us welcome to Hapa tenor Jonathan Cebreros.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the second episode of our Over the Rainbow Conversations with Artists from Oz series. And tonight, I am so happy to welcome tenor Jonathan Cebreros to the stage.
Hi, Jenna.
Hello,
It's a
Jonathan.
privilege to be part of this Over the Rainbow Artist series.
We are so delighted to have you. So thank you for talking to us tonight.
Of course, my pleasure.
And then also we have Peter Tyderick, who is our student representative. Go ahead and bring him on. Hi, Peter.
Peter.
So Peter is going to be monitoring the chat. So those of you that are watching this live, please put your questions and your comments in the chat, both in YouTube and on Facebook Live. We will be monitoring those questions and we'll bring Peter on a couple of times throughout our conversation tonight to be able to pose your questions. This is an interactive conversation, so we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you, Peter. We'll see you soon. Awesome. And I guess I should introduce myself. My name is Jenna Odom, and I am the music director for the Wizard of Oz Young Performers Edition, which will come to you, your living room, virtually on November the 12th is our opening night at 7 p.m. And we're really excited for this. I think we're all finding innovation. Jonathan and I are definitely going to be talking about this quite a bit. I know you've been doing this out of your own living room, Jonathan. So we're finding ways to be able to continue to make art and to bring it to your home.
Absolutely.
So that actually brings me to the first part of our conversation, Jonathan. So of course there's that iconic line in The Wizard of Oz, "There's no place like home." Our theme actually this year, Hammond Academy for the Performing Arts, is finding home. So students, I know a conversation we've been having throughout the year has been defining what that is, defining the word home and what that means to you. So Mr. Cebreros, I will ask you the same question. What does home mean to you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's knowing what home is some very particular concept, especially nowadays in which we're having a lot of challenges. And I feel like 2020 has tested us, each of one of us, in many ways. And I think for me, when I think of home, I think of concepts and feelings such as comfort, connecting with others who are close to me, and that happy place where I can just be myself and enjoy the moment. And my particular case, having been away from home now about 7 years, so just as a little bit of a background, all my family is in San Diego, in Tijuana. So everyone is there, my siblings, my nieces, nephews, my parents. So I come to find home in the little ordinary moments that I have in my life right now. Some of the moments I even made a list because I don't want to miss them. Some of the moments that I can describe that transport me to home are I'm watching a friend or a performer on stage and I'm subtly moved by their performance. When I'm on stage and then I happen to glance a smile in the back of the audience. When I'm with my Mexican friends and we're all talking in Spanish, it just brings me back home. Or on the first taste of that Mexican meal that I finally was able to recreate after spending hours talking to my mom, trying to nail down the recipe. Or when I'm walking on the streets and a stranger exchanges a genuine smile with me. One particular example that I remember, it was actually last week. It's funny because it's one of those moments that it has never happened to me before, that you only see like in cartoons and TV, in which an old lady asked me to help her cross the street. That was the first. It was such a good moment because it reminded me of like grandma, and just it was just such a nice interaction with her. And it's those little moments that you find throughout the day that just transport you back to home, and that sense of warmth and familiarity with the place you feel comfortable just being yourself. Or when I'm having a lesson or a coaching or something and there's a breakthrough moment, that's definitely, I think having music by your side is definitely almost a guarantee that I will feel at home at least.
That's such a beautiful image to think about, you helping that young at heart woman across the street. To me, that I think it shows a sense of trust, and being able to rely upon the community around you to be able to help you in those small moments. So that's really heartwarming that she felt that she could reach out to you and ask you for help in that way.
Yeah, especially especially right now, because people,
Right.
of course, trying to be safe with COVID and everything. And especially in a big city like Chicago, you hear the media like, oh, Chicago is super dangerous and everything. But then you find these kind of moments that teach you like, no, it's just like any other place. You can have good moments in the big city. And it was unexpected because of that, because sometimes the notion of what we have about the city life, but then those things happen and they just remind you, we're all human, we're all looking for that connection. And yeah, I completely agree with that.
So speaking of community, you were born in San Diego,
Correct.
but then were raised in Tijuana, correct?
Correct. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. So I'm sure you were headed exactly where I was as well. I just wanted to ask you a little bit about your upbringing and what community was like for you then.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, as you rightly said, I was born in San Diego. My parents were living in Mexico at the time, so I grew up and lived in Tijuana until I finished high school. Then I moved to San Diego for college, and that's in my last year of high school. That's when I had my first official encounter with music. I had to take an extracurricular class, and the only one that fit my schedule was choir. So it's interesting because I always had that sort of curiosity for exploring music, but I never did. It was just in the back of my mind. So other than learning a couple of Nirvana songs while I was in middle school on my guitar, I have really no musical upbringing, or no one in my family is musical at all. I know that my grandpa, paternal grandfather, he used to be a musician. I never got to meet him because he died when I was super young. And I remember him, but yeah, I really didn't have any strong musical inclinations other than just listening to music. Yeah, so that was my upbringing like.
So you say that the listening to music was what was musical about your upbringing. So talk to me about that soundscape. What were you listening to in the car with your family, at home? What kind of music were you surrounded by?
Well, I was surrounded. My parents, even though they're not musical, they have. I think they are very, very much true lovers of the human voice. Ironically, they really like singers who have good voices, who are good singers. So I always listen to the classicals, the classic Mexican traditional singers like Pedro Infante, Jorge Negrete, all of those singers from the Mexican golden cinema era. Um, it was very much a lot of that I listened to, and it's interesting because that singing is very close stylistically to opera, especially when it wasn't done in such a classical way. So there is a very little distance, I would say, between the classical singing and traditional Mexican mariachi music. So I listened to a lot of that, and of course pop. And then growing up on the border, a lot of the top 40s and all of that. So it was pretty mixed up. But at home, that's what I listened to the most.
So talk to me a little bit about, I know, and we said to the audience at the very beginning of this talk that your very first voice lesson wasn't until you were in college. So
Mhm.
I'm just curious, how did that, you were studying business at the time.
Correct.
How did that come about? Tell us a little bit about that story.
Yeah. So actually, so building up a little bit of what I said here, I started on my senior year of high school. That's when I first took choir. So that's when I first got that first exposure to classical music, with me being involved in it, other than popular culture. I graduated, and then I just knew that I wanted to be on a choir. I enjoyed. I knew that I enjoyed singing, that I had some kind of voice to be an amateur singer. So I continued exploring singing opportunities outside of high school. That's when I decided to audition for the Tijuana Opera Chorus without having any voice lessons. I was so lucky that I got in without any training. And then once I was there, I think people started to notice me. And then I just said to myself, hey, if I'm going to be doing this for a while, even if it's a hobby, I should probably learn how to sing properly. So I'm just going to take a couple lessons. And then from that point on, the rest is history. I started getting solo roles. There was a production of Carmen, and I got one of the comprimari roles after a couple of lessons. And then from then on, after being in the rehearsal process, it was just like, okay, I think this is going to be on the long run. It's not going to be a hobby anymore. So that was my turning point.
I am so struck by the courage that you exhibited by going to audition for the Tijuana Opera Chorus, having never had a voice lesson before. That is just that takes bravado for sure. So that's wonderful.
Well, that just tells you how little idea I had at the time of what it takes to actually be a singer. So,
but look where it's brought you. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I'm glad I took the risk. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I laughed when I read the line in your bio when you said that choir was the only class that fit into your schedule. So you sort of just had to go. And I giggled to myself because students out there that are watching this, some of you may find yourself in a similar position where choir just happened to be the thing that fit into your schedule. So walk me through. You said you listened to Messiah, that your teacher introduced you to that. And then talk to me about, as far as, do you remember a singular moment where you realized that something had shifted and that music was something, meant something different to you now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember the exact part of the Messiah. So at the time, the choir teacher was trying to expose us to different periods of music. So he started with Baroque music. In this sense, he wanted to introduce us to Messiah, which is a very commonly known masterpiece in the Baroque repertoire. And then he started talking about vocal polyphony, and he played the choral part of "And He Shall Purify." Part that just struck me when I just heard the different voices going in counterpoint and all in this fast high notes doing staccato and everything. At the moment, what I perceived was like, oh, it just sounds humanly impossible to produce. How is this even happening? And I think that's one of the things that amazed me the most. So that was a moment that I was like, whoa, this is serious stuff. And I want to be able to do that one day. So that was what the moment that got me sold into classical vocal music.
Hmm. A comment that my students had while listening to you is that your voice is so powerful and emotional. So I am curious, what is your experience when you are singing? What's the sensation like for you?
That's funny, and I'm glad you're touching on that because it took me a lot of time to just, as you obviously know, there's a point in which when you start studying voice, you just listen to yourself and listen and listen, and then once it gets to a point in which you have to stop doing that because you need to trust your sensations and you need to trust in what you're doing. And then when that was a turning point for me, that was the defining point in which I felt that I was producing a powerful sound in a way, but that it was also free of any tension. So in that sense, what I feel is that when I feel that I'm putting two places, and then I just think of my sound just letting it be. Those hours of practice and all the voice lessons and all the technique that teachers have taught me, I just need to trust myself and let myself go. That's, I think, the way that I associate it with and what I feel when I'm singing. Of course, it's different. Sometimes it also depends on the kind of music you're singing. Sometimes I really feel my sound on my head. Sometimes I feel it in the front. But it's usually when I feel that I'm just letting go, that's when I feel the most efficient emission comes out. And it can be powerful. Most of the time when you don't have that tension, it is. Yeah, I think that's what's key for me.
Thank you. Well, we're definitely going to circle back and talk a bit more about technique. Questions that came in from students are what are inspiring these questions tonight. And there are definitely more questions when it comes to challenges in the practice room. So we're going to circle back. But before we leave the topic of sort of your journey to studying music in a collegiate setting, I know that your parents maybe gave you a little bit of a fight when you decided that you wanted to study music. So could you talk about what that conversation was like? And to set it up a bit, we have character words or character focuses, I should say, at Morton High School. And our character focus for this last month was ambition. So it seems to me that the story here definitely is a representation of ambition. So if you would, could you please speak to that experience?
Absolutely, and I think it actually goes back to when I was studying business. Of course, my parents from they had an upbringing that it was difficult financially for them. So I see this common pattern among Mexican parents, in which they just want their kids to do the best, especially when they struggled as kids. So once they knew I was going to study business, they were like, "Oh, perfect! You're going to have a college degree. You're studying something that's going to be lucrative. So we won't worry about you." So when singing started to become a little bit more serious, that's when I talked to them and I said, "Hey, just so you know, I want to do this for real. I want to go to college for this." And yeah, they were supportive in a way, but their condition was, "Well, we'll support you, but we just want you to finish your undergrad degree, and then if you want to pursue it afterwards, then it's up to you." And I think in a sense it was a way of for them to make sure that I was being serious about it. Also, I was almost halfway done, so in that sense, once they saw that I was done, I did my round of auditions. I got the best scholarship where I ended up studying. Once that they saw I was completely serious, it was a complete shift. They started supporting me. They always did because they went to performances and such, but they were more serious about, okay, let's do a concert so we can raise funds for your audition travels. So once they saw that, that's when I started getting the full support into taking music seriously. Yeah, so that was a turning point, and it was difficult at first, but I'm kind of grateful they did.
Hmm. So, I think at this point, what we would all love to hear is we've been talking about your powerful, beautiful voice, and if you would to introduce, I know you're so gracious to perform for us a little bit this evening. So, if you could please introduce the piece that you are presenting tonight.
Yeah, of course. I'm so glad this talk is happening on November 2nd because for those of you who don't know, today is the day that we commemorate the dead in Mexico. It's the Day of the Dead. And there is a folk song about a legend in Latin American culture, which is La Llorona, which translates into the weeping one or the wailer. And the story is about a mother who lost her kids. They drowned, and she rolled. It's a ghost that rolls away, crying for her lost children. And the song is called La Llorona. And forgive my playing. Guitar has been my COVID-19 project. So I will do my best to not mess up, but I don't make any promises. Salías del templo un día, Llorona, cuando al pasar yo te vi. Salías del templo un día, Llorona, cuando al pasar yo te vi. Hermoso huipil llevabas, Llorona, que la Virgen te creí. Hermoso huipil llevabas, Llorona, que la Virgen te creí. Ay de mí, Llorona, Llorona, llévame al río. Ay de mí, Llorona, 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 llévame al río. No dejaré de quererte, Llorona, aunque la vida me cueste. No dejaré de quererte, Llorona, aunque la vida me cueste. No, no.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your talents with us.
Yeah, of course. And that last note wasn't part of the song, but of course it's a tenor.
In true tenor form, you must always have a high note at the end.
Otherwise it doesn't count, right?
Exactly. Wonderful. Well, thank you again. Thank you so much. So we're gonna segue a little bit into talking about this sort of the road to success. Mm-hmm. So right before you performed for us, you were talking about how you had this arrangement with your parents that when you finished your business degree, that they supported you to then move to Chicago, where you mm-hmm. pursued your master's at Roosevelt University at the Conservatory there. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, as far as what the word success looks like for you, especially here in 2020, where many curveballs have been thrown at all artists. Could you speak a little bit about what success looks like to you, how you define it?
Absolutely. And I'm glad we're talking about success, because I feel like sometimes there's this premise about there is success from the point of view of what societal expectations are. Mm-hmm. Reality, success is such a personal definition, not in the sense that it's private, but it's just very specific to what makes you happy. In my sense, especially when opera singing, especially when you start studying, there's this like prescribed ideal path of what success means, which means you graduate from the conservatory, your graduate degree, and then you hopefully you're going to audition and get into a young artist program. And then what's next? You're going to get enough credits to audition for the big companies, and eventually you'll make it into La Scala and the Met, and you're going to be the next Anna Netrebko or Jonas Kaufman. And it's interesting because, of course, that's like the main or the most commonly perceived path of success in the industry. And of course, there was a time in which that was my idea of success. Believe me, the concept of success will change because it depends. Instead of thinking of it as a future endpoint, I think you need to think about the present and what you're doing right now. And that involves a lot. It involves being realistic because the market for artists, even before COVID, it's hard. There's a vast majority pool of singers, and there is unfortunately not enough demand to cover all of the supply of singers that there's there. In my sense, one of the other things that you need to take into account for success is that there's not going to be a pattern or an all size fits all formula because everyone is different. Everyone has a different timeline. And yeah, you're not going to have the same journey as your best friend from college or from grad school. Even if you guys sing the same repertoire, the same voice type, studying with the same teacher, everyone's going to be very different. So in my sense, and that is something that, and I'm telling you because there might be students who go through that because I struggled for a bit when I graduated. Because there's this dichotomy of like, okay, if I don't get into a young artist program, does that make me a failure or what? So I think it's really important to have in mind that this is a very personal definition and journey. In my sense, just like my initiation into music was very unorthodox in a way or non-traditional. Right now, the way I'm doing music is the same. I'm using my business degree. I have a full-time 9-to-5 job that I really enjoy and that I really love. And then I have also my singing gigs, but I don't make most of my income singing. But I think that's true for most artists. You either teach, you either work on something else. So I've come to terms to that, to accept that, because what I discovered is that I need a certain routine and structure in my day-to-day, just because I'm that type of personality. I don't believe that every artist is just like, oh yeah, let's just go day by day. That's not the case for me. I think everyone is different and it might work for someone else, but I like having that structure and also having that structure and stability, not only financial, but also a mental stability of having a routine and doing something that I really like, allows me to pick projects that I'm really interested in, musical projects. I get to pick the projects that I'm fortunate to be offered or invited to. I get to pick with what companies do I work for. If I had a good experience, then I work with them, or what groups or colleagues when they invite you to projects. So in that sense, success to me, I think I'm doing it the right way that I feel like now, because that at the end of the day, it gives me the mental stability to be happy and then also be happy about the musical projects the musical engagements that I have.
Of course, if you know that you're going to have a roof over your head and food on your table, and that is, that's in place for you, it's kind of that like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That if if your survival needs are met, then of course you're going to be able to to thrive in a much different way.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it also has to do. It's because you have that part covered, but if that stability, if you're happy with that life, then I don't think there's why look further. So right now I'm happy. I'm not going to say that's going to change in the future. It might, but right now that's where I'm at, and I feel very comfortable with that as a definition of success.
So you spoke just a few moments ago about the kind of traditional path of what it is to be an opera singer specifically.
Mhm.
For my young students out there who don't know what a young artist program is, could you talk about that? What is a young artist program?
Absolutely, yeah. So if I understand correctly in terms of history and timelines, drug artist programs started to become popular in the US in the 90s, I believe. So every major company has what they call the young artist program, which is a combination of an outreach and a training program for just for young singers who have just graduated grad school, or maybe if they're very good undergrad. So you become sort of part of the musical staff of that company, and then you get to do outreach concerts in which you go to schools and sing for, you can sing for donors, and then you get to sing comprimario roles in their main stage productions. So it's a little bit of a combination of studying with someone, maybe coaching with the musical coach of the company of the opera house, and then during the day going and performing either for donors and at schools or whatever specific outreach programs that they have. And they usually last for about a year, I believe. I guess it depends on the program, but it's usually a couple of months, and then yeah, it's one of the best. It's one of the ways in which singers who want to make it are expected to gain experience at a certain level.
Great. So at this time, we're going to bring Peter, our student representative, back onto the screen. And hi, Peter.
Peter,
Hi.
hi.
So, do you have any questions from the audience for our guest?
One question from Mr. Pritchard is, where do you or how do you find motivation to practice during these times?
That is a very great question, especially nowadays. And just for everyone out there, I know it's hard to find motivation, especially when you get performances that are being canceled, or you guys are lucky to be having a production that's amazing. Um, in my particular experience, I think that one of the advantages that we have as artists is that we are creative in nature. So we think outside the box. So a lot of us found ways in which to collaborate with others. For example, I did a collaboration with a two tenor friend of mine. One of them was in San Diego, and then one of them was in Tucson, Arizona at the time. And we all recorded an ensemble's scene. And that, if you don't have the projects in COVID, you need to create those projects, and those projects are going to motivate you to practice. So that was one of the ways that I got motivated to practice on the day-to-day. Another example, one of my friends from grad school, we always talked about doing a scene from the opera Dead City by Cornwall. We never got to it, but now we were like, okay, we have time on our hands. Let's just do it. Let's practice. And we recorded it. We uploaded it into Instagram and Facebook and stuff. And so, yeah, I think it's just, if you don't have specific engagements or projects, just find friends and create them. And then that'll give you a goal to work towards to something, and a way to keep yourself motivated and distracted in a good way from everything that's going around.
Yeah, circling back to what you said at the beginning, that during quarantine you also relearned how to play guitar, correct?
Yes, that's correct. So I think that's one of the things. So the reason why I learned guitar is because I want to be able to play and then sing. So yeah, that was my musical non-singing project of COVID-19. So I watched a couple of videos on YouTube. I took a couple of virtual lessons, and then now from then on, it just got to what I did a couple of minutes ago, which still could be a little bit better, but I'm proud of it.
Okay, so we have another question from Mr. Sawinski, and it is how you feel that the foundations of studying music allow you to perform varieties of music. I think that's what I got from it.
Yeah, of course. It's interesting because when you study, especially when I went into the program, the graduate program that I studied, there were a couple of musical literature classes that teach you about not only classical music, but also about how other styles like Oriental music, which is not as traditional as what we know of Western classical music. So that is when you incorporate that and you start studying and see what composers do, what their influences were outside of what we know as the norm as classical music, you start to getting exposed to different rhythmic patterns, harmonies that are not what you hear every day. So I think in that sense, ethnomusicology has a way in which it allows a performer to become more versatile in a way. So knowing that and what other composers have done is really important into exploring your own way into performing. Like right now, the song that I perform, it's a song that everyone has their own version. It's a folk song, but then everyone does it differently. So I added a little bit of my own personal flair.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's one of the ways in which musical preparation allows you to become more versatile in other musical styles.
Well, speaking on preparation, what would be some advice that you would give to young singers who are starting out?
I think the most important thing is just to find the right teacher. Singing and learning to sing is such a complex and relatively new science. We're still finding out, even though there's formal vocal ped being taught at conservatories and colleges across. Every day we find out new things about the voice and teaching and being able to implement the theory in practice that's when the teacher comes in. You need to find the right teacher that works for you, because not every teacher, there are good teachers and there are great teachers, but there's no single teacher that will work for everyone. So that is crucial. It's hard, but it's just a matter of keeping trying, and finding the right teacher and stick to that teacher as long as you can and as long as you feel that you're making progress. I think that would be my main tip for singers who are just starting out. Just find the right teacher and make sure you're getting the right training. Make sure you feel good after voice lessons, that you're not getting tired. If you're getting tired, then you might try to find a different alternative as a singer.
So how many vocal instructors have you had, considering you started out in San Diego, then you went to Chicago?
Oh, that's interesting. So before moving to Chicago, I need to count them actually. I had 3 different teachers before starting my graduate degree. And then since I started my graduate degree until now, I graduated in 2014. I've had about 4 other teachers. So yeah, total about 7, 8 teachers since I started singing in 2007.
So do you still see a teacher, or?
Yeah, occasionally. Right now, I'm in the process of looking for a new one, but I've had a couple lessons, and it's not like when I was in school that I took a voice lesson every week. But now I do check in with a vocal teacher from every once in a while, and as much as I can.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you. And thank you, audience, for all of your thoughtful questions. We really appreciate your participation.
Thank you so much.
So to follow up a little bit on the conversation about technique, I want to come back to that topic. So what would you say would be the top advice that you have for being able to keep your voice healthy and strong?
In my case specifically, I think one of the things that I and even nowadays, it's just of course it's just gotten better, that I struggle with, especially is a problem with tenors. I cannot count the number of times that teachers have told me the same phrase in different ways, which is less is more.
Mm-hmm.
Trusting your instrument, trusting that singing has to be organic and natural. It shouldn't feel like you're doing a lot of work. It should be there should be tension, but the tension has to be in the right places. And usually what that means is below your chest. I think that's that's the top advice that has worked for me technically, and that's when I have to go back to the basics. That's usually the answer. It's just relaxing and relieving the tension and just singing the most efficient way possible. That's the way I would describe it.
So you spoke earlier about the thing that I find to be the most difficult for myself as a singer, and then also for my students over the years, is being able to shift your perspective from assessing yourself by listening to yourself, right, versus the self-assessment of the sensation of singing. So could you give us some advice on how you were able to make that transition?
Yeah, of course. I think the more you get to trust your instrument, and then the more you let go about that acoustic component. One of the things that I think is very important and that I cannot stress enough is record your voice lessons. That's key. It's you have there's no other way. Record them, and then afterwards, after you had your lesson, go in, get a notebook and listen to the lesson, make notes. Try to remember how you heard that sensation or that note that you were singing that you were struggling with. And then once you fix it with your teacher, how does it sound? Did it sound the same? Probably not. What do you remember to be the sensation? So sometimes when I, even when I'm in voice lessons, I say things that will stay in the recording. And for example, let's say I'm singing and then say, "Oh, I felt such and such. I felt a deeper breathing." Just so when I'm listening to the recording, I remember, oh yeah, I remember. Now I remember exactly what I was feeling. So now once you have that acoustic true reference of what your sound sounds like, and you remember the sensation, you can pair them together, then that's one way in which you're just going to become, the more you do it, you're going to become more aware of that association of sensation and what it's supposed to sound like. And then the necessity to listen to yourself will just start to take a backseat, and then I think that's what will work for me.
Great advice. So this is a tough question. I'll just say it straight out the gate. But if you could suspend reality for a moment, and you were 18 years old again, and you were looking at the climate that we're in here at 2020, and you were faced with the choice of whether to go to school for music or to go to school for business or whatever other avenue may be appropriate for your passions, what choices do you think that you would make in this day and age?
If you had asked me that question probably before COVID-19, I would have probably given you a different answer. And not to disappoint my undergraduate Jonathan, but I think I wouldn't change shit for a bit now. And one of the reasons for that is because, as I said before, I came to terms with not doing music full time and realizing that that wasn't my calling, in a sense, that I needed that other structure part of my life. But also, unfortunately, the education is just so expensive right now. Especially, you need to really think about the kind of investment you're making and if it's worth it. So if you're thinking about going to grad school and everything, yeah, that's perfect. But make sure you're going to go into crazy debt, because it is hard after you graduate, because you're going to have to keep taking lessons. But now you're not going to be giving those lessons because it's going to be harder to pay for them. And you're probably just going to go from taking one lesson a week to maybe taking a voice lesson a month and a coaching. There's application fees for programs, for auditions. So I'm kind of glad I did what I did in that sense. So be really smart about it, and especially when you're looking, I might be going a little bit off tangent, but if you're looking into programs, make sure you will not go into crazy debt. Even if it's Juilliard, even if it's the best school ever, it might not be worth it. That's just my take on it.
Thank you for that, for being so transparent, and for speaking to the reality of it.
Of course.
Good. Yeah, that's a theme that that has come back in both of the talks that we've had so far, is being able to. You said that you have to be aware of the investment that you're making, and I think that that's a very wise way of putting it. That it's you're financially investing in your future. So thank you for that advice.
Yeah, of course.
So looking towards the future. So here we are, in a reality where fine arts has completely had to reinvent itself over the last 6 months. What are your hopes for this rebuilding process? I think we were in an interesting time especially in the opera world, but in fine arts in general. From Hollywood to New York, before COVID happened, where the Me Too movement was exposing a difficult power dynamic. And especially in young artist programs, or when you're first starting out in the arts, that there were many instances of people being taken advantage of. And so there was a restructuring that was on the table before. And now that the walls have really completely crumbled for a lot of institutions. I'm just curious, what are your hopes for the rebuilding process? What is say in 5 years? What does opera, or what do fine arts look like in the United States?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think what I'm hopeful for is that opera, or the industry, or the arts in general, it used to be a little bit of, the power was placed in a very specific sector of people. So I feel like one of the hopes for me is that power will be distributed equally amongst all levels of organizations, and that there will be a more democratic system, in a way, that in which there's not going to be this single person that has all the say in everything that happens, but it should be a more objective and, in a sense, police in a way, because of the things that were exposed to the Me Too movement, that's completely unacceptable, and we need to come to that. We need to stop the idea of idolizing people, because they're humans. They're human just like us, and there's no justification that for what the sort of things that were being done, no matter how good of an artist you are, or how whatever idol you are. There needs to be a shift in power. It needs to be more objective and policed, in a way. Speaking from the structural point of
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
So talking about restructuring. So of course, today is November 2nd. It is the Day of the Dead, as well as the day before Election Day. So we are all, and everyone watching, we're very aware of the tension that is in the air all around us. Music has been called over and over again, called the universal language. So in a time where I think that we are all aching for commonality versus division,
Mm-hmm.
what role do you see the fine arts playing in being able to provide healing, whatever the outcome may be in these next few days?
I think, like you rightly, you put it in the perfect word. So I think music is probably going to be the medium through which we get into a society where there's no more polarization, and that everyone is going to be just looking for the greater good for everyone, not just for a specific sector. I'm talking about letting women decide for their own rights, letting people love who they want to love, especially me as a gay person. That is something that I really wished for. I think it's just a matter of that, just being me. I think music can have the power to just send that message that let people live, let people do their own thing. If it doesn't bother you, or it's not a harm to society, then what's it to you? So music I think can be effective in that way because it's something that we all feel comfortable listening to, and it's a message that strikes you in a different way than words do. Words can be perceived as a personal attack if you're in a certain side of the spectrum of the politics. But I think music provides that sort of comfort, and it delivers a message in a more soothing way, I believe. I think to be honest, I don't know how, but I think it's one of the characters that it would allow for that to happen and allow us to live in harmony.
Mm. So as we come to a close, I want to invite Peter back to the stage one more time. I think we have another request, but Peter, what questions do we have coming in?
I think his first song just left everybody speechless. Doesn't seem to be any questions uncovered.
Right.
That's what I was saying too, is that we were just asked for an encore, Mr. Cebreros.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'll do one, but I won't play.
Okay, great.
Because I wasn't prepared. I will be doing, what am I? Okay. I'll do O Sole Mio, which is
great.
Neapolitan tenor song.
Yes.
I'm gonna play the G chord. That's the song. Che bella cosa, una giornata e sole, un'aria serena dopo una tempesta, e l'aria fresca pare già una festa. Che bella cosa una giornata e sole, ma nata sole, che bella in o sole mio, stan fronte a te, o sole, o sole mio, sta in fronte a te, sta in fronte a te.
Bravo. Gorgeous. You sound glorious. I haven't heard you in almost a year. You sound fantastic.
We put a song together.
Yeah, I know. Wonderful. I can't thank you enough. This has been such a heartwarming conversation just as a friend to be able to get to see you and to hear more about your story, and to also just to get to hear that lovely voice talk about being able to provide healing. I think you have done that twice for us this evening, just to put a smile on my face both times. And I think we all need a bit more moments in which a smile is evoked from our faces. So thank you for that.
No, thank you so much. It is my pleasure to be part of the Over the Rainbow Artist Series. What an honor to be part of it. It's always great talking to good friends and about topics that are of interest for most of us. So it's my
Absolutely. Pleasure. I know that my students appreciate it. They've been so looking forward to this whole series, and particularly getting to hear you. They were completely blown away in hearing recordings, and I'm sure they're even more so with getting to hear you live. So it's much appreciated.
Well, thank you so much. And if they have any questions, you have my contact information, so feel free to relay them if there's anything that I can be of help with.
Sure. So tell us also, Jonathan, if we were students out there that are interested in hearing more about you or looking for upcoming events, where can they find more information?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a Facebook page. It's Jonathan Cebreros, commentator. That's where I usually post any upcoming events. Right now, I have what's been postponed from COVID-19. So that's what's next on the pipeline, and then there is a potential Christmas concert in the works. Details are still being finalized. If the restrictions allow it to be performed safely.
Right.
That's what I have so far. But if you have any questions or anything, you can go to my Facebook page or
Wonderful. Wonderful. Great. Well, our hour came to a close so quickly. So we're hosting this series, Hammond Academy for the Performing Arts. We're hosting this conversation with 5 artists leading up to our opening of The Wizard of Oz. The story is about the journey on the yellow brick road and the characters finding out that what they thought they were missing, they actually had all along. So we hope that you will join us for our next conversation, which is taking place on Thursday. We will see Dr. Abigail Santos Villalobos, who is a professor at Belmont University, a classically trained soprano, and she is also a YouTube star where she teaches vocal pedagogy in Spanish. So we look, So we look forward to seeing Dr. Santos Villalobos. And also, I believe we have a poster to pop up here as an advertisement. There it is for The Wizard of Oz. Please do buy your tickets now at hammondapa.booktix, that's with an X.com. We are opening on November 12th at 7 p.m. We will also perform on the 14th and then the 15th at 2 p.m. Remember, this is a virtual show, so it's coming live at you in your living room. Go ahead and purchase your tickets now. Jonathan, thank you again so much. I can't thank you for the offering that you have given us this evening. So
it is
take care.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Bye, everybody. Till next time.
Bye.